The other was also seeing the DI score. I think that was one section I was underconfident on. So seeing that was the section that finally saved the score. I think that was also sort of just personal, in terms of personal development and just feeling more happy about the fact that you could cross that hill. It wasn't like a one-stop, change or overnight. I saw that the scores were sort of increasing. I thought it was a longish curve that, I got stuck at, let's say I started off at 79, 80s, got to 83, 84, then somehow got to 86, 88 in mocks. And I think on the final day, then that culminated into an 89. Yeah. I remember our first call, you bring up the Scholaranium results and you shock me with saying, oh, why is this a particularly low score? Right. So I think just that data visibility and just understanding, okay, what's not working out, and that identification happened on Scholaranium. I think there was a lot of motivation as well. I think if you didn't have that confidence in me, if you weren't that confident in my abilities, I might have not been given the second attempt. I might as well take another shot and test it out. It's not the time to give up. So I think this is just an incredible feature, and I think this is one thing that every aspirant is just lacking.
Hi, everybody. Today we have with us a very special guest, Divyam, who on his recent GMAT scored a 735 with an outstanding DI89. Across the board great scores, Divyam. A big congratulations that we're finally here. So welcome. How does it feel?
Thank you so much. I think you've been part of the journey right from day one. So I think we've shared that emotional roller coaster together, but it definitely feels great that finally we came out on the right side of it, and the entire journey just culminated into a great outcome.
That's true. That's true. Because yes, there are ups and downs, right? As you so rightly said. So what was the feeling when you saw the score pop up on the screen?
I think for a minute, disbelief, right? I for sure thought that, okay, this is probably a great outcome. While I was expecting a great score, but definitely I think the day turned out well for me. Cross sections, I think things were balanced and evened out. So I think that was great. The other was also seeing the DI score. I think that was one section I was underconfident on. So seeing that was the section that finally saved the score. I think that was also sort of just personal, in terms of just personal development and just feeling more happy about the fact that you could cross that hill on that one section you never thought you could.
Yeah. Submitted it. It's not crossed the hill. It's like the top of the top. DI87 is brilliant score. So I think it's a testament to all the hard work you put in. Now, coming at the very beginning, Divyam, like you started out at a higher ability in the higher 600s kind of a space when you started out with GMAT, e-GMAT, but there were certain specific challenges that you had identified. Can you take our viewers through what those challenges were, and then we'll go about how did you tackle them?
Sure. I think overall, as you mentioned, I started off at a decent score. I was at a 695, sort of a score in my second, third mock. So I think early on I'd reached there. My problem was that I'd also plateaued at that scale, right? So while I knew the basics, while I knew the concepts, the problem was that I wasn't scaling beyond that. And these were a mix of both, let's say, strategical errors that were happening and also some conceptual errors, some weaker points that would just pop out on an unexpected mock, right? That I wasn't prepared for. So I think those were the biggest challenges that sort of came there. I think midway through my journey, realized, heard from a lot of friends that e-GMAT is the subscription you guys need to be taking to solve this. Started off with the e-GMAT early on. I think that really helped me solve all of this. Right. Overall, I think first was just understanding where I lack, right? What's not working out, and not in a test scenario, but rather in a practice environment. So I have corrective action before the next mock result comes in. Second, I also think better curation of just products that were available, right? Because I think when you rely on other sources, the general consensus is sometimes the answer key is not matching. Sometimes, there's just over indexation on one particular topic. I think getting a balanced view, getting the right sort of difficulty levels in a question set, which sort of gives you a clearer image while you're prepping, I think that was very important. And that helped me sort of, cross that plateau once I was there.
Got it. So, as you rightly said, at the stage wherein you came in, it was not so much that you had to learn concepts or you had to build your foundation or learn something new. What you really needed at that stage was to be able to, because your score had plateaued too, to be able to figure out what that reason for the plateau was, fix that, work a lot on behavioral aspects of solving a question, right? Fine tuning. And we extensively use Scholaranium here, wherein you would take the cementing quizzes, say with verbal. You took like a bunch of cementing quizzes for CR, for RC, then we could deep dive into the data, identify what those rough edges were, and fine tune. So while we were discussing, I know that you also mentioned the access to good quality solutions. is critical, especially for you in terms of verbal. It went a long way. So do you want to take our viewers through what you did actually in verbal in terms of the practice on Scholaranium, and what were the aspects that really helped turn your verbal score around to a brilliant 85?
Yeah, I think overall, if I were to discuss on the verbal strategy, where I was, of course, there was a basic level of aptitude. There was a basic level of sort of understanding. It was just that it was rough around the edges, right? And I didn't know what source to use, what's a structured program. So the first thing that happens is that the minute I start using Scholaranium, right? I remember our first call, you bring up the Scholaranium results and you shock me with saying, "Oh, why is this a particularly low score?" Right? So I think just that data visibility and just understanding, okay, what's not working out. I think that identification happened on Scholaranium. I
True.
didn't really understand that it was rather the RC section, not the CR section, that was a pain point for me. And I think that discovery first happened over, verbal. Once I had the discovery, then it was about execution, figuring out what happens. I think for me, what worked the best was the sectionals and the custom quizzes that you could have made, right? So I think I gave more than 10, 15 sectionals, both condensed and normal. Condensed when you're feeling a little lazy and you want a lighter day. So I think extensively used both of them. I would say they were, I think, closest to the actual GMAT and give you the prep, because it's also more important to be in that time bound pressure sort of zone when doing it, because it's just a different ballgame. So I think that happened. Third, I would say, even with the availability of questions, right? So most questions would have a video solution. So it's one thing to do a question, get it right or wrong, but it's another thing to understand what really went wrong and why my answer was wrong, right? So I think that sort of clarity the video solutions definitely gave me. And I think last, it was just the customizable options. So within Create, like a custom quiz as well, I knew in RC, like let's say a business or an economics passage came naturally to me because I have that background. But something in humanities or biosciences was just extremely difficult. So I think I could custom create that by level, by sort of topic, which helps you just nail it to the point and just ensure that you're doing very, very targeted prep. And I think that really created the delta till the end.
Very true, very true. Like I was looking at your data as you were speaking to show the kind of, what we are talking about. I think we don't RCI is not something that I could pick up, but there was this clear evidence. I remember that assumption kind of questions,
Yeah.
right, in CR. While overall CR was good, this was a problem area, and we can see that your hard accuracy was not bad.
Yeah.
60% is a 80th, 85th percentile. So it's not bad. It is there. It's average or above average. But that you were able to take to by the time you were in the last 7 attempts, it was 100% accuracy, and your time just plummeted down. So
Yeah.
I think that is the beauty of being able to identify and specifically target, because what you needed was not, I think, an overall improvement. It was targeted improvement for these areas. And what you said, I think again starts at the level of semantic quiz, moves up to custom quiz to be able to really tackle those specific areas, and then culminating in sectional marks, because as you build each unit is when you get a overall good score. Now, uh, I think we should have started with DI, because DI89 is such a brilliant score. So you mentioned DI was always, in your opinion, one of your weaker sections, right? How did this turn around to a near perfect DI score happen?
Yeah, I think for DI, I think for context on me also, I had apti prep. I had given some of these exams earlier, gotten 99 percentiles. So I somehow knew that I have the ability to crack this section. This isn't very tough. And given I've been in consulting VC, it also came naturally to me, right? The data is something that we use every day. Now, the problem with the DI section was not so much that it was extremely tough, but it was just unpredictable, right? There's no one rule book or there's no one formula that you can extend and hope that, okay, there's some pattern match going on and this will work. So I think that unpredictability and therefore that sort of shakiness that you get in an exam, I think that really impacted my scores early on. I didn't know sort of what wasn't working. Second, with DI, it's very different. I think the assortment of questions that you get, right, differs a lot more. So it's just on some platforms you keep seeing graphs and tables and some of those questions coming up. I think it was almost midway into my prep where I realized that verbal reasoning is a big part of DI that I really never cared enough for, because a lot of the other sources and so on that I was referring to, somehow I just felt that's a smaller piece of pie. But then I realized that's just a chunky meat that I've always been getting wrong, right? So I think just fixed a lot of those. I remember, that is also a section that most people are just underconfident and scared of, because you usually don't see high scores in that section. I sort of had that same mindset early on, but I think through my interactions with you also realized that it's not necessarily true, right? I remember one of our conversations, I mentioned that MSR, I don't think I can ever do. So can I just skip it and move forward and hope for the best? And he said, but that's just not how you should approach the exam. Give it a fair shot. If you can't, then it's fine. But you shouldn't be scared of a section to say, okay, I can't score here. So I think a lot of it was mental barriers. A lot of it was just understanding what's not working. And I think lastly, it was just getting familiar with all the curves that this section would have thrown at you. So once I think all these three things started flywheeling, then I think it was a smoother sail. And I started like it wasn't like a one-stop, change, or overnight I saw that the scores were sort of increasing. I thought it was a
Mhm.
downward curve that, I got stuck at, let's say I started off at 79, 80s, got to 83, 84, then somehow got to 86, 88 in mocks. And I think on the final day, then that culminated into an 89.
Yeah, yeah. And it's huge, right? If when you say you're at 79, 80, unlike in verbal or quant, wherein you already were at a, way better ability than that, this was a huge jump. And what you rightly said, it was not a complete leap to that
Yeah.
path. There were, it was a step approach. And yeah, it's such a brilliant score. As I said, you should frame it and put it. Just it just feels so good. So in terms of prep, we were already there, right? We have to speak about that attempt,
Yeah.
wherein things had all panned out. You had worked on all these aspects, and then you confidently, I would say, went and took the test, and unfortunately, it did not go well. The score like plummeted to a 645. So why did that happen? And how did you, I'm sure you must have been demotivated after that. So how did you recover from that?
Right. I think, of course, that was my first attempt. Of course, I wouldn't say that, oh, there was no prep going on before that. I think I was well prepared even by then. Gave the attempt. I think what didn't work for me was mostly on just the mental state I was giving the test in, and also strategically how I was approaching sections and the order and so on. Right. So I think while I'd worked on the core concepts, I had worked on the material for the test, I hadn't maybe worked on the test taking strategies in itself. So I think that was a clear gap that we had identified. I think, of course, it was demotivating, right? This was lower than what I was expecting, and honestly, I think what I was prepared for as well. But I, I think I spoke to you also about it. I think the consensus was that yes, I'd worked hard for it, and possibly even you mentioned that even the Scholaranium tells us that you are there at that level. It's not that maybe in the test or you're not there yet. So maybe just trust yourself enough and maybe give it another shot, right? So I think the day of the exam itself, in the evening, I just booked for the first possible date that was 16 days ahead. So it was just natural that I have to give it again. This is not the true potential.
Yeah. So in some ways, it's a 90-point jump in like 15 days.
Yeah.
Right. But the truth of the matter, as you said, the Scholaranium data told us that 645 is not where you were at. There
Yeah.
were some test taking aspects. I remember that conversation wherein we clearly identified the question sets that you were getting wrong in
Yeah.
terms of trying to save time meant that you were and just that re-strategizing as to how to go about tackling this was really helpful. Um, Divyam, you also mentioned that Sigma X mocks played a big role in
Yeah.
giving you and setting you up to tackle the test head on. So what was different about them?
Yeah, I think to give you a flavor, I've done all the official mocks as well, right? I've given all of them. I've given a couple of the GMAT club ones as well. The problem is that all of these mocks are not consistent, right? So
Mm-hmm,
most of these mocks either they're too easy. I think even on the official, some of them are much easier than the other ones.
mm-hmm,
Either you get a false positive or you get a false negative where your score just plummets a lot and you don't know what went wrong. I think even within the mocks, even when they are at the same level of difficulty, what you'll end up realizing is that uh, there's just disparity between how sections are covered, right? So some DI sections might just be over-indexed on one sort of problems. A quant might just be very algebra heavy versus arithmetic. So sometimes it's just easy to get away with your sort of problem still lurking in the background, or sometimes it's just easy to always be on cloud nine and say I'm acing every single GMAT official test, and then the actual D-Day arrives. With
mm-hmm,
e-GMAT, I would say the first mock was very humbling, right? So I got a 40-point reduction from what I'd gotten on the GMAT official, which actually prompted me to ask, okay, what went wrong? Right? I was very confident. I was very sure that I'm at that level, but this clearly tells me I'm not. So I think
mm-hmm,
that is the start of the conversation that then helps you build forward. Second, I think in just terms of insights and analysis, right? The official mocks, of course, give you the answer key and some sort of analytics, but
mm-hmm.
in the Sigma mocks are just much more detailed. So instead of just
Yeah,
figuring out, okay, what's the right answer to this question, you also understand, okay, in what time did I need to solve this? What was the median
yeah.
time here? Am I taking too much time? In some cases, I was taking too less time for a particular question.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also problematic there. So I think just that insight and just consistency in quality and reporting, I think those help
Mm-hmm.
you figure out where your abilities are and give you a clearer image. That sort of also resonates with how the actual GMAT works.
Yeah, very true. Because if you're taking mocks, then you're at a stage wherein you need to have access to be able to figure these things out. Like that score that plummeted. This is the verbal score. You are able to see in a glance what are the questions that you took longer on, what are the questions that, you know, uh, you could have saved time on, or I think there is no rush through here. But we were also able to identify there are questions that you got wrong because you were either overconfident or rushed through or made some process mistakes kind of a thing. And the ability to be able to get to that detailed solutions, figure out, because that is what mocks are about. When you are taking mocks, you know how to solve a question. You're already there in terms of ability. Now it's about expressing, right? So that's very good, Divyam. So as you said, you and I worked through the last mile push program because you were starting out at that ability level. What value did the program add?
So I think the last my program was one of the best features of the e-GMAT subscription. I think from day one, because I had already gotten those scores in the official mock, you and I were connected, I was mentored. I think Amrut just forced me that today in 2 hours you have to write that email. I need to get it started in the next 4 hours. So I think there wasn't a lag of a day also between buying the subscription and the LMP. I think the best value add is while you're studying for GMAT, one thing that tends to happen is you're too engrossed in what's the question and what's the concept. You stop thinking strategically to ask yourself, okay, why is something not working out? Because your instinctive answer is okay, just put in more effort, just put in the hours, do more questions, and that's automatically what will solve for itself. I think that is one barrier that LMP sort of helped me cross. I think we'd connect every week or so, right? We discuss every single mock that I'd given. Some of the mocks I would have said, yes, I've analyzed, I have the answers, but then you'll give me a list of exhaustive things that I need to come up with and give you an analysis on. And that was the first time I was looking at that data and analyzing, okay, it's actually a problem. I think between the first and the second mock as well, there were a lot of strategic calls that I didn't make right. So, for example, first was thinking, should I rush through quant and then save time for review later? That impacted my performance severely, and I didn't realize that that was the reason why that was happening. But it was through conversations that I figured out, right? Something as basic as just understanding when to take a break in the exam, right? Is it after the first or the second? I think that really played a big game in my DI score as well, because I think just taking that break before DI helped me be better rested before the exam, because that was also a tougher section for me. Right. I think apart from that, just understanding, okay, if CR is the problem, if RC is the problem, what exactly should you be doing, right? Because the answer always is not just, okay, jump to the set of questions and start keep solving. It's also about analyzing. So I think it was just great having a constant guide, someone you can run all your hypotheses and ideas and problems with, right? And of course, right, even when there was, let's say, a plummet in the score and the first attempt didn't go well, I think there was a lot of motivation as well. I think if you didn't have that confidence in me, if you weren't that confident in my abilities, I might have not been given the second attempt. But that it was quite a jump. So I think that also reaffirmed within me that, okay, sure, if someone who's been in the industry for so long is comfortable and is confident in my abilities, I might as well take another shot and test it out. It's not the time to give up. So I think this is just an incredible feature, and I think this is one thing that every aspirant is just lacking. Just reliable guidance that you can trust and someone, and it's also customized guidance, right? It's not a general rule book on how to crack the GMAT. Everyone faces different challenges. Just to get customized answers and to have someone hear you out and give you expert opinion, I think that was just a great value add.
Yeah, I'm going to miss our brainstorming sessions and the diagnostic sessions. But yeah, it's always a happy thing when we don't have to do that anymore, right? So how confident, as I said, it was literally a 90-point jump between your first attempt to the final attempt. And all of 15 days didn't do too much during those 15 days. So that goes to prove the fact that 645 was an outlier, not the 735, right? So after all that we discussed, between the two tests, this time, what was different when you went to take the test?
I think my mental state was very different. This time, instead of hyperventilating and focusing on, okay, what if I make that one mistake? What happens if I got one question wrong, or getting scared if I see an MSR? I think I just had a much clearer view that it's just one question at a time, and that's all you have to think about it. Second, I think last time I was carrying a lot of backlog from the last section. So if the verbal wasn't at par with what I thought it was, that would honestly translate into the next section as well. That is something I actively didn't do. So if you see, the first two sections weren't the exceptional sections, but the third one was, which clearly showed that, okay, I could somehow contain my own analysis and overthinking about, okay, what score am I going to get? So I think that really helped. Third, I think strategic calls also that we make. So very simple. In quant, this time I was reviewing every question while I was doing it instead of saving those 10 15 minutes later on. Right? In verbal, it was more conscious of the time, understanding, okay, RC, I just need to spend that time on the first question. And again, then just taking a break before that and just ensuring that if DS is, let's say, a tougher section for me or a tougher question type, can I just spend 30 more seconds or 20 more seconds on question to double verify, because that is where I tend to make mistakes. So I think I was just a lot more aware of what's happening. I was just better prepared in my head how I want to tackle the exam. And I think all in all, it was also just a good day also, I guess.
Yeah, it's you know everything. There are variables in your control, there are variables outside of your control, right? But the good day happens only when the variables that are in your control are under your control.
Yeah.
So that I was telling this to some other person, he was saying the score was magical. I was like, the effort behind the magic is something that, is not seen. It was meant to be. That is what it was. So as I said, a brilliant score is going to give you a brilliant, brilliant fighting chance to get into the programs that you want to. And it's been a wonderful journey, Divyam, spanning what, a couple of years in terms of when you started your GMAT prep?
Yeah, I think the first attempt was 2021 or 22, so it's been 3 years.
Yeah,
So I just did
exactly.
the first attempt, dropped off in the middle and restarted it. So I think after, let's say, 3, 4 years of just aptitude exams and so on, finally there's an end to that prep, and I think it's a good ending that way.
It is a good ending. It is a brilliant ending. So any two, three things that you want to share with the other people still grinding it out? Uh, what
Yeah,
would that?
I think one thing that I would share is also that I think every question and every section deserves its own importance and respect, right? A big problem with me was I used to mess up more on medium questions than the hard questions, right? There were biases in my own head. Okay, that a quant is definitely going to be like a best score in my all three sections, and DI is supposed to be the lowest. I think once you relieve yourself of these shackles and your barriers in your own head, right? That what a subsection is supposed to do and what you're supposed to get, and just free flowing, trying to ace each section with its own merit. I think that really changes the narrative, right? If you go in with the
Mm-hmm.
that okay, this section is just tough, I just can't crack it. I think there's very little likelihood that things are going to change. And I think it's also unpredictable. You can't really hack the system and say, okay, these two are the only sections I'm going to focus on. On the last day, you just don't know, right? One section didn't go as per plan. But if you do have a backup, if all three are strong, right, I think you'll still stay. And that's how the scoring typically works. Uh, Overall, I think e-GMAT just provides a lot more data structured thinking to how you go about the exam. I think while every aspirant does work extremely hard, I think what's lacking is just data backed judgments. Right,
Mm-hmm.
this platform gives you that ability to just understand what's not working out. Right, get your scores, get a dashboard that would tell you, okay, this is the section, this is the aggregate that's not happening. I think just that visibility helps you figure out what's not going well and just course correct at the right time. Right, and just ensures there's no shock at the end of the exam because you're just prepared, you were aware of what's happening, what's
Very true. Those were good nuggets of wisdom, I should say, and you should know. So, so thank you so much, Divyam, for taking the time out today. I know we just come back from the office, so thank you so much. Here's wishing you all the very best from the entire e-GMAT family for the next steps, for the next adventure.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, and thank you for all the support throughout the journey.
You're welcome, Divyam. It's been a pleasure.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.